Hello and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct, the show where two British brothers talk all things NFL. I'm your host, Dom Corbs, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Corbs. And since this is our inaugural episode and our tens of thousands of listeners won't know who we are, we'll quickly introduce ourselves. Nick, you go first.
Hi there, so I'm Nick. You might hear my brother refer to me as New, as his family nickname. I've been an NFL fan my whole life. I currently play for the Edinburgh Mavericks. Go Mavs. And I hope you enjoy the podcast. Yeah.
So I also played wide receiver for 3 years at the University of Nottingham. My career stats, because I know my so-called friends will definitely comment on this when they hear the pod, is 0 catches for 0 yards for 0 touchdowns. And New, I was doing some research. You know who's got more or better receiving stats than I do?
40-year-old Tom Brady.
That's, you know what? You've nailed that, to be fair. It is. Do you know how many catches and yards he's got?
2 for 4 yards.
3 for 53.
53 yards of Tom Brady.
Yeah. I checked it. He must have had a big one somewhere, a trick play or something. And there's an offensive lineman, Penny Sewell, who has 1 catch for 9 yards, and he obviously plays offensive line. So that gives me all the credibility you need to know to talk about the NFL. So this is our first episode. And today, or the day that this will be airing, is the start of the NFL preseason on the 1st of August for the Hall of Fame game. And what better way, New, to kick off our pod than to do some predictions for the season ahead, so for the 2024 award predictions. So that is going to be, we're going to both give our predictions for a Super Bowl winner, an MVP, an Offensive Player of the Year, and a Defensive Player of the Year, and also a Coach of the Year. We're saving the rookie awards, the Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year, for a later episode, which we're doing specifically on rookies. And there will also be a long shot woven in there from us both somewhere. So,
Okay.
New, why don't you give me your Super Bowl pick first?
Okay. Yeah, so...
Oh, wait, hang on. Let me stop you there. Sorry. Let me just say that neither of us are choosing the Chiefs just because...
Or the Niners.
Or the Niners. It's kind of their Super Bowl to lose almost. It's a bit boring. The Chiefs are inevitably going to be back there this year. Are they probably going to win it? Yes, but is that a very boring answer? Also, yes. So we're taking the Chiefs off the table. So, New, take it away.
So my Super Bowl pick of this year is the Detroit Lions.
Oh.
So I think the Detroit Lions, obviously they had a great last year, making the NFC Championship game and almost beating the 49ers away in Levi Stadium. But the reason why I'm picking the Lions again is that they retained the talent they had last year and built on it through the draft. So they didn't lose any...
That is a hype beast pick.
I understand it's a hype beast pick, but let me explain it to you.
You're selecting Fred again, essentially, if you were the team. I do actually like Fred again, by the way. So
no, I think so. They re-signed Amon-Ra and Penny Sewell to long-term deals. They got Terry Arnold through the draft, who Dom, I'm sure he was for me, he was a top 2 corner on my board and a top 15 pick in my opinion. To get him at 28 was great value.
Yeah, I love Terry Arnold.
They also traded from Carlton Davis from Tampa, and corner was the weakest position. And now they've got 2 very serviceable starting corners. But most importantly, they kept their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson.
Yeah, he is. Ben Johnson is really good, to be fair.
The Lions had just under 400 yards, offensive yards per game last year, and also had 11 postseason touchdowns. So their regular season form was able to continue to the postseason, where teams like Miami haven't been able to do that over the last 2 years. So I think there's no reason why they would regress, and they've only gotten better.
Well, I've got 2. Well, one big road bump to your Lions prediction then, I think.
Okay, hit me.
What about the 49ers?
Well, what about the 49ers? Well, their system seemed to work. They were up 3 touchdowns to them in the first half.
Yeah, what was the end result of the game, though?
Well, they did end up losing, which is a fair rebuttal. But they for the first time that whole postseason, the Niners looked vulnerable.
Yeah,
they looked like they could lose, and the Lions were the only team to do that until. But you could argue the Chiefs barely even did it in the Super Bowl.
Look, to me, I do. The Lions are definitely an up-and-coming team. Ben Johnson is a really, really good offensive coordinator. I was stunned that he stayed in Detroit this offseason, and it was huge for that team. They get to keep him. I really like Amon-Ra. I like Aiden Hutchinson. There are some pieces on that team that I really like. Penny Sewell, the man I already mentioned, having more receiving yards than I do. But I just... And look, Jared Goff has proven me wrong. I was a big Jared Goff doubter, and he's been so much better since going to Detroit than he was in Los Angeles. He's improved massively as a quarterback, but I still just do not trust Jared Goff to win a Super Bowl. And I know he made it to one with the Rams, but we all know that he was carried by that Rams team led by Sean McVay, essentially giving him the play call in his ear up until the very second. So for me, I see the vision, New. I see it. I just don't know if I can fully get behind it. But let me give you mine, and you can.
Okay, I just give my final thing is that if you look at Brock Purdy, who, this might be controversial for me to say, is just an extension of Kyle Shanahan. And I think Jared Goff is just an extension of Ben Johnson. And I think elite offensive coaching can carry a average quarterback who makes the right decisions to a Super Bowl. Or well, maybe not one.
Oh, right. There it is. The little caveat there, right? You're comparing him to Brock Purdy, who lost the Super Bowl.
But in overtime, it got close.
No, it was close. It was close. I'm being too much of a hater here, I feel.
Yeah.
What I would also think, though, that with the NFC North that the Lions are in, obviously, it's not a pushover of a division at all. The Vikings, obviously, the weakest team there now. They've lost Kirk Cousins. Yeah. They've got JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold being the quarterback. But I could see that division cannibalizing itself.
That's a fair point as well. But I still think the Lions are better than the Packers. And I think the Vikings this year with Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy aren't going to be able to make many significant moves.
Okay. All right. Noted. So my Super Bowl pick is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. So if we're not choosing the Chiefs, we need to choose a team that can realistically beat the Chiefs. And Joe Burrow has a 3-1 record against Mahomes. So he fits that bill perfectly. He is back from his injury. He had a hand injury last year. There are some social media doctors out there saying that that could be a longer term injury, and I'm praying that it's not. But importantly, the Bengals have the 6th easiest schedule. Because they finished last in their division, they get the benefit of having a last place schedule, despite being a much better team than that. So they play teams like the Patriots, the Commanders, the Panthers, the Giants, the Chargers, and the Titans. Those should be 6 almost gimme wins. They've got a really strong roster. Obviously, Joe Burrow at quarterback. I think he's a top 3 quarterback in the league, up there with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, the wide receiver core is incredibly strong with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and also Jermaine Burton, who I am really high on coming out of Alabama. I think Trenton Irwin will be the 3rd wide receiver initially, but watch out late in the season for Jermaine Burton. He is an absolute baller. Got some character concerns. Hopefully that's not an issue, but we'll see about that in October, essentially. The offensive line is decent. They've added Amarius Mims. And the defense, led by Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator, is really strong as a unit as well. So I think the Bengals are perfectly poised, almost a sleeping giant. People are forgetting that the Bengals are a really great team. I think, obviously, Lamar Jackson doing really well last year and the Ravens doing really well. People are kind of sleeping on the Bengals a bit here, and I don't think they should.
But I think the Bengals are a great team, like you said, but I think it's almost the inverse to my pick of the Detroit Lions. I think they've got a great quarterback and a terrible coach.
Yeah.
I'm not going
to defend Zach Taylor. He's not a great coach.
I don't think Zach Taylor, like you said, Jared Goff got carried to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase are dragging Zach Taylor kicking and screaming to the Super Bowl. He's doing everything he can to sabotage that team. And I still think they're great. Like you said, they're sleeping giants. But I just think with Zach Taylor, I don't see how they can get over the finish line.
Yeah, Zach, you're not wrong then. Zach Taylor is a coach that I have questions about. They always seem to start off a bit rocky as well. They never really hit the ground running offensively. So that is always a concern. And they're playing Kansas City in week 2 this year. So that will kind of almost be their season. If they can come out of that, 2-0 after winning the first game and then Kansas City, then they could be shown to be a really strong team. But if they, for whatever reason, start 0-2, then maybe my agenda's in the mud. But I'm going to trust the Bengals this year a lot. You'll see a running theme throughout these pods that I'm really high on the Bengals. They've got a lot of players that I think are really, really good. And with that leads me, I'll take this one then, leads me perfectly onto my MVP, which is going to be Joe Burrow. I can't say the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl and be an amazing team and then not pick the quarterback on that team to be the MVP. When you're looking at winners of the MVP, the past winners of the MVP, it's realistically got to be a quarterback and it's got a team that's going to make the playoffs. The voting's obviously done before the playoffs, but you need someone to have really cooked in the regular season. And Joe Burrow, like I said, with that 6th easiest schedule, great weapons, experience, he is going to do that. He's going to have the stats to back up the campaign, the touchdowns, the yards, etc. He might lack an MVP moment, quote unquote. He does have a game against Dallas in week 14, which I think could be it. They're away in Dallas against the Cowboys, a team that will also be pushing for the postseason as well. So I think that will be the kind of make it moment for Joe Burrow's campaign. And also, he's never won anything. In the year where he was amazing, 2021, where they went to the Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers won MVP, and obviously he was injured in his rookie year, so he didn't win any rookie awards. And the MVP, as we know, is an award which needs a storyline. And Joe Burrow not having won anything, I think, perfectly fits that narrative.
I think that's a fair point, but Dom, my rebuttal to that is: have you seen his new trim?
Yeah. Oh my!
It is terrible. No,
he's lost all his aura. He's lost all his aura.
No MVP of mine will be sporting that haircut. The Phil Foden Euro wannabe trim. It is horrific.
It is extremely sauceless, unfortunately, but he can ball, and at the end of the day, that plays.
But in his 5 seasons in the NFL now? 4 seasons?
This is his 5th, I think.
Yeah, going into his 5th. Yeah, he's only completed one set of 17 games in a regular season, maybe 2. Do you reckon he can stay healthy throughout this entire time? He's got an ACL tear, hand injury.
So for me, the health argument, I think, is one which people massively overrate, because the types of injuries that a quarterback like Joe Burrow gets are basically just luck. The first one in his rookie year, he had no offensive line. It was like a revolving door, and he got his leg cut in 2 basically. And in the hand injury, he got it because I think he was in his throwing motion and it hit a helmet or something like that, or it was during a sack. I can't quite remember, but that's unavoidable. That's just playing the sport. And yeah, I think he's just been unlucky, really. I think injuries are mostly about luck. Obviously, at certain positions, you're more susceptible to certain types of injuries, but Joe Burrow isn't, doing QB sneaks and diving into the pile and pushing for extra yards like a Cam Newton is. He's a pocket quarterback. He gets the ball out quickly. He's just been unlucky. So I do trust him to get through this season uninjured.
Okay, that's because I also was going to say Joe Burrow before his haircut. And you said the idea of long shots. I like the idea of Jordan Love, and I do like the idea of Kirk Cousins, but I'll talk about that in the later pick.
Oh, Kirk.
I think also he's very low on the betting odds. So if any of you are betting men, I'd recommend putting a value bet on Kirk Cousins.
News tips. If you want to lose money, do what News says.
By the way, I've literally never won a bet in my life. I should probably say that. But however, I think it's quite hard to overlook Lamar repeating. I think they've got the same team, but they've improved with Henry at running back. I think most of Lamar's ability is based off the RPO, the play action game, and the run game. And I think with Henry, even though I do think he's past his prime, is going to allow Lamar to do that more freely instead of, a Gus Edwards or a J.K. Dobbins. Also, I think his receiver core has slightly improved. Obviously, they have lost Odell, but I think Zay Flowers...
Odell Beckham. What are they going to do without him?
Exactly, but I think Zay Flowers will take a significant leap in year 2. Last year, he was easily one of the best rookie receivers, if not the best rookie receiver.
Yeah, he was very good last year. And obviously they've also got Mark Andrews back healthy as well, who I think missed significant time last year. So I really don't have anything to say against the Lamar Jackson shout, to be honest. I will hold my hands up and also say that in the beginning years of his career, I was a bit of a Lamar Jackson hater.
I was a bit of a Lamar hater, I must say as well.
He's come on so much as a passer. Obviously, his running is electric, and it always has been. It's been a massive part of his game. But as a passer, I think Lamar has really flipped a switch in the last 2 years. And I could definitely see him going back to back, but he's obviously going to lose to Joe Burrow. So
same division. So
yeah, well, it's a good division, isn't it? Apart from Russell Wilson and the Steelers. So offensive player of the year, why don't you take this one as well?
So sort of linking back to my previous Falcons take, I'm going with Bijan Robinson.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I like that a lot, actually.
So as a fantasy owner, Bijan ruined me last year and basically made me miss the playoffs. And he had under 1,000 rushing yards, which as the 8th overall pick, I think he was.
Yeah.
Is pretty horrific. I think we can both agree. However, I think they were very underutilized. He was very underutilized. And now they've got a new OC, Zach Robinson, who worked with the Rams. And you saw what happened with Kyron Williams, who is nowhere near the talent Bijan Robinson is. I think Bijan could really, really excel this year. You saw his raw talent. You saw the highlights. But I think this year, with a new OC, new team, he could really put it all together.
I really like that shout, to be honest with you. Obviously, you're right. Bijan had a terrible year last year with
Horrific.
an absolute disgrace of a head coach in Arthur Smith. That man has terrorized the Falcons for the last couple of years. My only pushback on yours there, Nu, would be, what about Drake London? What about Kyle Pitts? There's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. And even Tyler Algier, who obviously, won't be getting the same load he got last year, but he might get some goal line carries still. Maybe he'll definitely be, he'll definitely be in the rotation in that backfield.
No, I agree, and I think that's a fair point. But I think a strong passing game only benefits the run game and vice versa. I think the issue with the Falcons last year is they're so one-dimensional, like to the point where Bijan may be put in as a dummy runner.
Yeah, he was a lead blocker for a Cordarrelle Patterson jet sweep.
Exactly, and one time he was injured, he just didn't tell anyone.
Oh my god, yeah.
that 0 fantasy points, Dom, made me lose to you in fantasy.
Oh
he just
my
didn't play.
god,
he didn't play, and I'll never forgive him for that.
I played Bijan twice that week. I played against him twice, you and my mate Connor, and I was watching it with Connor in New Orleans, and we were like, where the hell is Bijan?
Where is he?
That's a good shout.
I think with Kyren Williams, I think could be a quite nice comparison there, because Kyren Williams doesn't have that raw talent that Bijan has, and he got 1.3 rushing yards last year, 1.3 thousand.
Yeah, he was seventh in total rush yards.
So not a significant amount.
Might be fourth. He got a lot of yards.
Yeah, so I could really see that happening.
Nice. I like that shout, and I think you're right to identify that maybe Bijan Robinson's arrival will be this year rather than last year. Yeah. So my offensive player of the year, I've looked back at previous winners. I've done some crunch some numbers. I've been in the lab, and barring Pat Mahomes, Matt Ryan, and Cam Newton, they've all been skill position players, and they've had massive seasons stat-wise, obviously, and they've been on big teams because you need big personal stats. So you can't kind of be a leading receiver on a team that goes 5-12. How's my maths?
Yeah.
5-12?
Yeah,
17 games. 17 games. So I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb from the Dallas Cowboys. He, on his own team, is only contending with Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert for targets, so he's the clear wide receiver one. He had 1,859 receiving yards last year, only like 3 less than Tyreek Hill. Granted, Tyreek Hill played in 1 less game, but nevertheless, CD had a massive season. And the Cowboys are a big regular season team. We can park their postseason woes because that doesn't matter in this award whatsoever. And Dak, I think, is a very overhated quarterback. And he's got a quarterback that will feed him. Dak will feed him and is capable of doing so. I think Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the league, and Tyreek Hill is the most explosive. But I think CeeDee Lamb is the third best behind those two guys. And I think people are finally starting to see how elite CeeDee Lamb is. And Mike McCarthy slightly cooked with that offense last year. I'm not going to lie. He really kind of did. I was a bit of a Mike McCarthy doubter. So I am all in on the CeeDee Lamb Offensive Player of the Year this year.
Well, as a Giants fan, I hate the Cowboys. And I think as any NFL fan they hate the Cowboys. But it is quite hard to argue against CeeDee Lamb. He has the size, he has the strength, he has the speed, and he has the system that's going to benefit him. I say the only thing is that Dallas as a team didn't really do much. So maybe teams might have got used to their system. There's not like an extra weapon diversifying their offense. Let's include Zeke, which I'm
exactly. Hang on, have you realised that they've got Zeke Elliott back? The washed corpse of Ezekiel Elliott getting us 1.9 yards per carry or something mental.
Literally. Yeah, no. So, but I think it's a fair point. It's hard to argue against. So obviously, you got the Hills, you got maybe even the Ayuks, the Jeffersons for sure, the AJ Browns, who could break into that mold. But he already has a production in a system that benefits him. So yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, exactly. The Cowboys just cook in the regular season. They just do, whether we like it or not. And I'm not a fan of the Cowboys, but I think people hate them almost too much. Like they sleep on CD.
Not enough.
They sleep on CD. They overhate on Dak. But anyway, CD is my pick for Offensive Player of the Year. That leads us to Defensive Player of the Year, and I'll take this one.
Okay.
It's been a defensive lineman for the last 10 years, apart from Stephon Gilmore once. And it's been an edge rusher every year apart from that, unless you're named Aaron Donald. Obviously, he's now retired. if he was still in the league, I would still pick him. But I'm going to choose Myles Garrett to go back to back, a bit like you did with Lamar and his MVP. I'm going to choose Myles Garrett to go back to back.
Dom Quiddy, I've also picked Myles Garrett for my Defensive Player of the Year as well.
Well, it's great because I've got a long shot. So we'll both talk about Myles Garrett.
I also have a long shot as well, so cool. Perfect.
Fantastic. We're just so aligned. It's F1 and our chemistry is through the roof. So obviously Aaron Donald and JJ Watt went back to back. And for me, Myles Garrett is one of, like, 1A, 1B, 1C, one of the best defensive players in the league. I think he's one of the most dominant players in the league, full stop, offense and defense. And it's almost less about his dominance for me, honestly. It's more about the fact that he's playing in such a strong Browns defense that opposing offenses can't give him the attention that he needs. So he's obviously playing with Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Shelby Harris on the defensive line. Zadarius Smith had 61 pressures himself alone last year. You can't simply just double team Myles Garrett and then just, the other guys are bums and they're, we don't need to worry about them. You can't do that with this Browns defense. So that is going to give Myles loads of favorable matchups and opportunities to dominate. They've also got really great blitzing linebackers like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He can blitz the passer like he's been shot out of a bullet. And they moved Garrett all over the defense last year. They put him over the center doing a Euro step. I can't remember what team it was against. But he's standing up. He's in a three-point stance. He's out wide. I think at certain points he even lined up as like an outside linebacker. Like, they've moved him everywhere to get him those favorable matchups, to get him to the quarterback in the best way possible. And his dominance aside, as I said, the position that he is in to succeed for an award like this is absolutely massive. What did you think about Myles Garrett, Nick?
I completely agree. I think the stats, the sacks, the pressures, I think it was north of 65, almost 70 pressures, 15 sacks last year. They speak for themselves, really. He is dominant. He is, in my opinion, the best D lineman in the NFL. The only thing that could draw back is maybe the Browns' offense having a bad year, them missing the playoffs. And like you said, I don't think it should, but it does factor in.
What do you think about, though, the fact that someone will comment, I know Steelers fans, if they're only listening, will say, well, TJ Watt, like, how close do you think it is? How close is it for you, the gap between, say, a Myles Garrett, a Micah Parsons, a TJ Watt, a Max Crosby even?
Yeah, no, I was thinking this while I was making my notes. It's very little. If TJ Watt were to win, I would not be shocked. Maybe it might just be because I quite like Myles Garrett. It might just be some sort of personal bias. But it's really hard to separate them because they're all very versatile players. They're all dominant in their positions, and they're all sort of talismans for their teams as well. So it's, in a way, it's like another golden age of pass rushers, which I think is only good for the NFL. And, if TJ Watt were to win, I wouldn't be disappointed. If Max Crosby were to win, if Micah Parsons, I hate the Cowboys. But all of these players are great. Maybe Micah Parsons is slightly more versatile than the others, which might give him a bit of a step up. But, it's hard to differentiate. What do you think?
See, here's my take, and I feel quite strongly about this. I think there is a pretty clear gap. I think it is Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons are 1A and 1B. I'd put Myles Garrett 1, I think, just.
No, TJ.
Yeah, I think I'd put Max Crosby over TJ Watt, I think. I think TJ Watt is a great player, but he is not in the same category for me as those other guys. His pass rush win rate is way lower. The reason why he does really well is because teams don't double him. His double rate is well below Micah Parsons and well below Myles Garrett. And that's because he's just not as deadly. And he's great. People seem to hate the fact that you don't say when a player is elite. I don't think TJ Watt is elite. I think he's great. I think he's, the fourth or fifth best pass rusher in the league, which is a great achievement. But he is not in that same realm as Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons for me.
I think that's a crazy take. Was it 2022? He played 14 games and got 19 and a half sacks or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, no, he gets the production.
That is dominance. That's almost breaking the single season sack record in less than a full season.
But your own argument, you said that. So basically, with Myles Garrett, he had like the 7th most pressures this year. Like, it's not just about getting to the quarterback. Like, we watch the game with our eyes. We see when a player is being double teamed, or in cases like Aaron Donald, triple teamed. Like, that contributes to the game massively, almost just as much as a sack does. And you can't get a sack every rep. You can't get a pressure every rep. Like, it's about the ability for you to open up the rest of the defense. And I think Myles Garrett does that better. Micah Parsons does that better than TJ Watt does.
That's fair. That's why Aaron Donald was so dominant. You see him getting triple team, quadruple teamed.
Yeah, exactly.
He was
insane,
even when
man.
he wasn't generating statistics.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is it's not all about the sacks. It's not all about the pressures. Obviously, that's a massive part of these awards and a massive part of determining who is quote unquote better. But I think in TJ Watt's case, he's just not in that elite tier for me personally. But anyway, Nu, give us your long shot.
So my long shot is, like you said, it's always been a defensive line for the last 10 years. But I really want this guy to be Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, no. Have we got it? Have we got the same one again?
Is it Carl Hamilton?
Oh, no, but it's really similar. Okay, go on. Take it away.
Well, so I love Carl Hamilton. I love how versatile he is. I think he is the best defender on that Ravens roster, which you could argue is one of the best defenses in the league. He's able to play linebacker, able to play corner. He's able to blitz. He's able to cover. I think his versatility we haven't seen since a Troy Polamalu type in the 2010s. And he was one of the last safeties to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's able to. The issue is that, like you said, with Myles Garrett, I think his biggest strength is not his statistics. It's not the interceptions, it's not the tackles. It's what he's able to do for the rest of the defense. You're able to do a corner blitz. You're able to rush one more in a blitz. You're able to drop someone back into coverage. And I think that's his biggest strength. But it's quite hard to statistically quantify his impact, which is why I didn't say him in the first place. What do you think, Dom?
Oh, no, this is mental. Okay, so I referenced Kyle Hamilton in my on my notes here for my long shot. My long shot is Derwin James.
Oh, so very similar.
Basically the same. And it's so funny because obviously Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter, who is now the new Chargers defensive coordinator, come from the same defensive coaching tree. Like, the Ravens defense and the Chargers defense this year will be really, really similar. They're going to be really high in blitz rate, and there's going to be some crazy rotations. There's going to be some interesting blitz packages. It's going to be a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks to play against both those teams. And Derwin James is going to play that Kyle Hamilton role, I think, in Jesse Minter's new defense. He's going to be all over it. He's going to get sacks. He's going to get tackles for losses. He's going to get interceptions. And I also referenced Troy Polamalu. He won it in 2010. He won it in 20. Look, no, we're just aligned.
Exactly.
He won it in 2010 with 7 interceptions and 1 sack. Obviously had loads of tackles, etc. But as the big hitting stats, which are interceptions and sacks, which is kind of what you need really. He won it with 7 interceptions and 1 sack. Derwin James has had like 2, 3, 4 sacks the last couple of seasons, but his interceptions is what is lower. However, the way that Jesse Minter plays defenses, so with Derwin James will be lined up faking a blitz and then we'll drop back into coverage, or he'll be off the line and then drop back in and then come into a blitz. I think that plays into Derwin James's strength brilliantly, and I think will also set him up for more of those big hitting stats. A nickel blitz, that's a sack. If he's blitzing at the line and then drops back into coverage, that could be an interception opportunity. So I think he'll get those big numbers, and it's a long shot. Like you said, we've both done a safety for a long shot here, which is very interesting. We've not aligned on this, by the way. We've not.
Yeah, no, we haven't discussed this before.
We're doing it live, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that we've both gone for safeties in 2 similar style defenses.
Yeah, and also I was saying Wing Martindale is the new Ravens defensive coordinator, who obviously used to be the Giants. And you see how Xavier McKinney performed. Even players like Julian Love, he really increased their value. And Carl Hamilton is a much better player than them.
Yeah, see that is the concern with the Carl Hamilton pick, though, isn't it? Is Mike McDonald is now the head coach of the Seahawks, and he was the defensive coordinator. So obviously, Wink Martindale plays a similar style of defense.
To blitz. He blitzes the most in the NFL.
Yeah, loves to blitz, but I don't think it has quite the same coverage style on the back end.
That's true.
So I think you're right. I think Carl Hamilton will have a big year. He'll get like those sacks, he'll get those pressures, he'll get those like highlight reel plays where he's like, hitting a quarterback or whatever. But I think the loss of Mike McDonald will be quite a big one to your shout, which means, as just a separate throwaway one, watch out for Devin Witherspoon in the new Seattle
Oh, I like
defense.
that. I like that. I hadn't even thought about that one. That's a
Yeah,
good one.
these honestly, if you've got a defensive chess piece, like it's like someone that can line up all over the defense and can hit hard, and obviously all of those players are very different. Like Carl Hamilton is really tall, and Devon Witherspoon has not got that height at all. But just the way that Devon Witherspoon plays, he plays like he's 6'3" or whatever. So just watch out for that. I've kind of cheated. I've given 2 long shots there. But no, what about Coach of the Year?
So, Coach of the Year, similar to my Bijan take, I've gone with Raheem Morris.
Oh, okay.
And my biggest one here is, Raheem Morris hasn't been the best head coach in the past, but I literally think he cannot be worse than Arthur Smith. Last year, they went 7-10. And this year, they have by far the easiest strength of schedule in the NFL. As in, it's not even close. It's by, we can get Paddy to look it up, but it's by a fair few percentage points. And they will get 11, 12, maybe even 12 wins this year. They've got 6 free wins a year effectively in their division. And they're not playing really, they don't really have any big games out of their division. Drake London, Carl Pitt, Bijan Robinson, New OC, Kirk Cousins especially. And I completely understand that they did kind of shit the bed on the draft. They did not make the most of it. But I could see that looking back being like how the Packers drafted Jordan Love, or even the Lions draft last year, where it was slandered in the media. And then 4 years later, people like us said, oh, yeah, no, I always loved it. I always loved it. But I just don't see, I see them improving. I see them winning their division. And for a first-year head coach getting 5 more wins on his total, I think that's a lock for Coach of the Year.
I don't hate that shout, but he would not be in my top 5. I don't think if I was like choosing a 5th. And this is why. Okay, so you referenced the draft. Obviously, Raheem Morris has nothing to do with that. He'd obviously have like a bit of a say, I'm sure, but it's not his remit. I think that was a terrible draft. Doesn't matter how well it ages, because the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins to a massive deal and then drafted a quarterback. If they wanted to draft a quarterback, don't sign Kirk Cousins to the deal. And they could have added another really high-end weapon, but we'll park the draft. The draft isn't really relevant to this discussion. Can a head coach win that award when there is such a clear upgrade in the quarterback position? So going from Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins, can a coach win it when you're being gifted, as you say, an easy division, a clear upgrade at quarterback, and by default, you are considerably better than the old head coach?
I think that's a fair point. I don't think either of us are Desmond Ridder fanboys, and I think he was probably the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last year. But what I think, especially I think the media might focus on, is how Bijan's output is going to improve, how Drake London's output is going to improve, how Carl Pitts has finally reached his potential. I think the focus will be on the underutilized pieces rather than Kirk Cousins, who we know is a good quarterback playing well.
I don't know, man. That's your first take so far that I'm not on board with. I'm not on board. But look, that's what it's about.
Who's your Coach of the Year pick then, Dom?
My Coach of the Year pick. So I've also crunched some numbers, and it's got to be a team which doesn't have an elite quarterback, which, to be fair, Kirk Cousins isn't. As much as I do like him, he's not an elite quarterback. Yeah. Which also makes the playoffs. So last year it was Stefanski with Joe Flacco. The year before it was Brian Dable with Daniel Jones. Then it was Mike Vrabel with Ryan Tannehill, etc., etc. So I'm going with Shane Steichen. And Anthony Richardson does weirdly have a cult following. He's only started 2 full games and people are literally fawning over him. I think he's very good. He's very talented. But
Dom, can I quickly, when I was checking the MVP odds, Anthony Richardson is the 4th most betted quarterback to win MVP this year. Yeah,
see, this is the problem with I'm going to start with the issue first here, is that Anthony Richardson has so much hype behind him. He is very good. He's very talented. We don't know how good he is yet. I'm not going to say he's very good because we don't really know in the NFL. And he only had 395 total passing attempts in college. Trey Lance had 312. The way we're viewing Anthony Richardson right now is crazy to me, genuinely crazy. But putting that aside, that's the only thing that I think could undermine my argument, is that people go absolutely nuts about Anthony Richardson. And unfortunately, the way that Shane Steichen's going to run his offense, it will run through Anthony Richardson a lot. So he will get a lot of hype. But he's shown he can run a great offense. The Philadelphia offense, the Eagles offense, fell apart last year without him being there. And he took a team led by Gardner Minshew essentially almost to the playoffs. They didn't make it because
9-8, wasn't it? They went
9-8, and they lost
Naheem
the
Hines
last.
dropped that pass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That pass in the closing moments of the game. If they'd made that, they would have scored a touchdown. As a Texans fan, I'm very glad they didn't. But they were this close. Like, they were really, really, really close. Obviously, Anthony Richardson will be back healthy. He's reportedly 255 pounds and can run.
A big boy.
Yeah, he can run in the 4.4s. They ran the second most RPOs in the league last year with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. They're definitely going to keep running those RPOs. And with a quarterback who's 255 pounds, can run in the 4.4s, that is going to eat against defenses. Yeah. It really is. They got Jonathan Taylor back healthy. He wasn't there at the start of last season either. So in a backfield with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor with RPOs against, defenses that just don't have the mass behind it to stop something like that. The offensive line has also found its feet after weirdly forgetting how to block in 2022. So I think the team is perfectly poised to go on quite a large run, unfortunately for me as a Texans fan. But I think this is Shane Steichen's award to lose, frankly.
I think that's a good take. Last year, 9-8 with Gardner Minshew. But the issue that I have is, actually, not with the coach, but I just don't see their talent in their team. And they've got good players, but I just don't think they've got great players in any position.
But that's even more helpful to the cause of the Shane Steichen hype train, because that's what I said about that's the reason why I don't think that Raheem Morris is going to win, because the team is so good. Like, that's the same reason why the Chiefs head coach, Andy Reid, hasn't won one recently.
That's a slightly different argument. But
it is slightly different.
I do understand what you're saying. Yeah.
But if you have that talent, it's hard to pin it on the coach. Obviously, the coach, I think, is the leader. They kind of set the tone. They, for the most part, you can't beat a good head coach in the NFL. But I think the Colts are actually a really good team, but they don't have that high-end elite talent. They've got AD Mitchell. I'm really high on AD Mitchell. I think he's going to be great. They've got Josh Downs. He's a great pure slot weapon. They've obviously got Michael Pittman Jr. at wide receiver. They are stacked on offense now. They're really, really stacked. I
wouldn't say stacked, but they definitely have a good offense.
Player for player on that offense, if we're talking about the combination of offensive line, quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, that is rock solid.
Yeah.
The defense...
It's solid. That's how I describe it. I'd say it's solid.
I think you're underrating this Colts team
maybe
massively. And I'm not even a huge Anthony Richardson guy, but I just think in this offense with Shane Steichen, he's going to cook this year.
It's hard to argue against that.
So, Nu, that wraps up our first episode. Thank you to everyone that got this far. Our first episode is now in the books, the first brick in the wall. We hope you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. In the next episode, we'll be covering the worst first contenders, so keep an eye out for that. But until then, Nu, see ya.